The silence in a boardroom is a special kind of cold. It's not empty. It's heavy, filled with the unspoken calculations of men and women who measure life in fiscal quarters. I felt that silence press down on me, a physical weight on my 72-year-old shoulders. Across the polished mahogany table, my son, David, refused to meet my eyes. He stared at a water glass as if it held the secrets to the universe. Beside him, his wife, Isabella, was the picture of cool composure. Her gaze, however, was fixed on me, and it held the triumphant gleam of a predator that knows its prey is finally cornered. "With all due respect, Eleanor," she said, her voice smooth as silk but sharp as glass, "your methods are antiquated. Vance Family Provisions needs to evolve. This attachment to old family recipes and decades-old suppliers is sentimental. It's not business. My sentimental methods built this company," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "My husband, Robert, and I started it in our own kitchen with a jar of my grandmother's tomato sauce. Those old suppliers are families we've worked with for 40 years. They are not line items on a spreadsheet, Isabella. They are our foundation." Isabella gave a small, condescending smile. It was a smile I had come to know well. "And we are grateful for that foundation," she said, the words a hollow echo. "But foundations are meant to be built upon, not lived in forever. The market has changed. We need to streamline, modernize, and maximize profit." The board agrees. She gestured to the silent, suited figures around the table. Their faces were impassive masks. They had already been won over, seduced by Isabella's sleek presentations and promises of skyrocketing stock prices. My son, my only child, was now just one of her disciples. "This company," I said, my voice rising slightly, "is not just about profit. It's about quality. It's about a promise we made to our customers, a promise that what's inside that jar is real, honest food." Isabella sighed. A theatrical display of patience wearing thin. "Eleanor, please. No one cares about that anymore. They care about a slick label and a low price. Your palate, your ideas, they are from a different era." She paused, letting the final brutal words land with surgical precision. "Perhaps it's time to let the next generation lead. Before your nostalgic impulses do irreparable harm to what David and I are trying to build." In that moment, lying on the cold, polished surface of that table, I saw my life's work being dissected and dismissed as a relic. They didn't just want my company. They wanted to erase me, to paint me as a senile old woman clinging to a forgotten past. What they didn't know, what none of them could possibly imagine, was that my late husband, Robert, had been a quiet genius. He was a man who not only saw the future, but also understood the frailties of the human heart. And before he died, he had left me one final secret gift. Not a fortune, not a hidden will, but a weapon, forged in the arcane language of corporate law, hidden in plain sight. A clause. A single forgotten paragraph buried deep within the company's founding charter. A clause that was about to become their worst nightmare. My name is Eleanor Vance. And this is the story of how I took back my soul. Robert and I were a team. I was the heart of Vance Family Provisions. He was its brilliant, unseen mind. I was the one with the recipes, the passion for ingredients, the connection with our farmers and our customers. He was the one who quietly built the financial architecture that allowed my passion to become an empire. He was a cautious man, a student of history and human nature. He believed in trust, but he also believed in firewalls. "Family is everything, Ellie," he used to tell me, his hand warm on mine. "But business is business. And sometimes people change." He passed away 5 years ago, leaving a void in my life that I knew would never be filled. I threw myself into my work, the familiar rhythms of the kitchen, and the company providing a comfort that nothing else could. David, our son, had always been a good boy, but he lacked his father's steel. He was soft, easily influenced, with a deep-seated need for approval. When he brought Isabella home, I saw the shift immediately. She was a hurricane in a designer dress. Ambitious, intelligent, and utterly ruthless, she came from the world of corporate mergers and acquisitions, a world where companies were not built but conquered. She saw Vance Family Provisions not as a legacy to be cherished, but as an undervalued asset to be stripped and sold for parts. She saw my son as a stepping stone, and she saw me as an obstacle. Her campaign to undermine me was a masterclass in subtlety. It began with small suggestions in meetings, phrased as innocent questions. Have we ever costed out using tomato paste concentrate instead of fresh tomatoes? The savings could be enormous. Eleanor's relationship with the old farm co-op is wonderful, but shouldn't we explore sourcing from larger, more efficient international suppliers? She planted seeds of doubt among the younger board members, whispering about my resistance to change, my emotional attachment to outdated practices. David, wanting to impress his dynamic wife, echoed her words. My own son became her mouthpiece. The heart of our company was the main production kitchen, a place that always smelled of roasting garlic, fresh basil, and simmering tomatoes. The head of that kitchen, the keeper of our sacred recipes, was a woman named Maria. She had started with me 40 years ago, a young immigrant with fire in her eyes and magic in her hands. She wasn't just an employee. She was my sister in all but blood. She was the first to feel Isabella's chill. She asks me for the recipe book every day, Maria told me one afternoon, her brow furrowed with worry. She says she wants to digitize it for efficiency. I told her the recipes are not just on paper, they are in here, she said, tapping her heart. She looked at me like I was a piece of old furniture. The first major blow came 6 months after my public humiliation in the boardroom. Isabella, with David's timid support, had successfully lobbied the board to appoint her as chief operating officer. Her first official act was to announce a complete corporate rebranding. Vance Family Provisions was to become Vance Modern. The warm, rustic labels I had designed with Robert were replaced with a cold, minimalist aesthetic. The slogan "From our family's kitchen to yours" was replaced with "Efficiency you can taste." With the new brand came new formulas. I was barred from the test kitchen, my access card mysteriously deactivated. Then the rumors started. Whispers of cheaper ingredients, artificial flavor enhancers, and high-fructose corn syrup, replacing the pure cane sugar we had always used. The soul of my company was being systematically poisoned. The final betrayal, the one that broke my heart, was the firing of Maria. Isabella did it herself. A week before the launch of Vance Modern, she called Maria into her new gleaming white office. I waited outside, my heart a cold stone in my chest. Maria walked out 10 minutes later, her face pale, clutching a small cardboard box with her personal effects. "After 40 years," Maria whispered, her voice cracking. She said my methods were unhygienic and my knowledge was obsolete. She said I was a liability. She gave me 2 weeks severance pay. We stood in the hallway that Maria had walked for 4 decades, and for the first time I felt true, unadulterated hatred. I hugged her, my own tears mixing with hers. "This is not the end, Maria," I vowed, my voice a fierce whisper. "I promise you." That night they came to my home. It was the house Robert and I had built, a place of warmth and memory. They sat in my living room, the picture of a concerned modern couple. "Eleanor," Isabella began, her voice oozing a false sympathy, "we're worried about you. Your recent emotional outbursts. Your resistance to progress. The board feels and we agree that it might be best for you to officially retire. We have prepared a generous severance package." David finally spoke, his eyes fixed on his clasped hands. "Mom, it's for the best. You've worked your whole life. You deserve to rest. You are trying to steal my company, and you call it rest?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Isabella's mask slipped. "This company needs to survive in the 21st century, she snapped. "It can't do that while it's being held hostage by your 1950s nostalgia. Take the deal, Eleanor. If you don't, we have other options. We could petition the court to have your competency evaluated. A public, messy affair. Is that really what you want for the Vance name?" It was a declaration of war. They weren't just taking my company. They were trying to erase my sanity, my legacy, my very identity. After they left, I sat in the dark for a long time. Then I walked to my husband's study, a room I had barely touched since he died. I unlocked the bottom drawer of his old oak desk. Inside was a single heavy leather-bound book. It was the original corporate charter for Vance Family Provisions, from the day we incorporated. My hands trembling, I turned the brittle pages until I found what I was looking for. Page 17, Article 9, Section 4. A small, unassuming paragraph titled, "The Legacy Clause." I called the one person in the world I knew I could trust. Arthur Pendleton had been Robert's lawyer, his best friend, and the executor of his will. He was 80 years old, sharp as a tack, and he despised corporate raiders with a passion. I read him the clause over the phone. I heard him let out a slow whistle on the other end. "My God," he said, his voice filled with a newfound respect. "That sly old fox. Robert always was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers." He knew this day might come. The legacy clause was Robert's masterpiece. It stated that if at any time, the company's core product line was materially and fundamentally altered from the original verified family recipes, or if more than 50% of its long-term, loyal supplier contracts were terminated without just cause, any founding member of the board, which meant me, had the right to call an emergency shareholder meeting and trigger a legacy audit. This audit would be conducted by an independent firm, and if the violations were confirmed, the charter allowed for the immediate dissolution of the current board and the forfeiture of all executive stock options granted within the past 5 years. It was a corporate nuclear bomb, and Isabella, in her arrogant rush to modernize, had unknowingly handed me the launch codes. "But we need proof, Eleanor," Arthur warned. "Rock-solid, undeniable proof. Whispers and rumors won't be enough. We need documents. We need testimonies. We need their new corrupted recipes." And so began my secret war. I was a ghost in my own company, but ghosts have their advantages. No one pays attention to the old woman who comes in on weekends to water her office plants. While they were busy designing their new packaging, I was making quiet visits. I spoke to our old farmers, the ones who had been sent curt termination letters. I spoke to former employees, gathering stories of the changes in the kitchen. But I needed someone on the inside. I found her in the most unexpected place. Her name was Lily, a bright, young intern in the marketing department. I had noticed her because she was the only one who ever looked me in the eye and smiled. She had a deep respect for the company's history. I saw her one day in the cafeteria, looking at the new Vance Modern tomato sauce with a look of disappointment. I sat down next to her. "It doesn't taste the same, does it?" I said quietly. She looked up startled. "Mrs. Vance, I know it doesn't. It tastes cheap." I took a gamble. I told her a part of the truth. I told her I was fighting to save the company's soul and I needed her help. I saw a spark of defiance in her young eyes. She was in. Lily became my spy. She was clever and careful. She stayed late, ostensibly to finish her work, and gained access to the servers. She found the emails from Isabella to the new suppliers, demanding cheaper, imported tomato paste and artificial flavorings. She found the internal memos detailing the new cost-cutting recipes. She even managed to smuggle out a sample of the new sauce, which I sent to an independent lab for analysis. The results were exactly what we needed. A chemical breakdown that proved the new product was a pale, artificial imitation of my grandmother's recipe. We had them. Arthur began preparing the legal assault. The final piece of the puzzle was the stage. I needed a public forum, a place where their humiliation would be absolute and undeniable. Isabella, in her hubris, provided it for me. She planned a massive launch party for Vance Modern. She invited the press, industry analysts, food bloggers, and major investors. It was to be her coronation as the new queen of the culinary world. It would, instead, be her execution. The night of the party was a spectacle of excess. It was held in a cavernous, modern art gallery, all white walls and stark lighting. A massive banner with the new Vance Modern logo hung behind a stage. Isabella, in a stunning silver dress, moved through the crowd, accepting praise, her smile radiant and triumphant. David followed in her wake, looking like a handsome, well-dressed shadow. I arrived quietly, dressed in a simple, elegant dark suit. No one recognized me at first. I was just another old woman in the crowd. Lily found me, her eyes wide with nervous energy. "It's all set, Mrs. Vance," she whispered, handing me a small USB drive. "The presentation is loaded." The event began. A slickly produced video played on the large screens, showing images of fields and farms that were no longer our suppliers, while a narrator spoke of a bold new era of flavor. It was a masterpiece of corporate lies. Then Isabella took the stage to a round of thunderous applause. Thank you, she began, beaming. "Tonight, we are not just launching a new product. We are launching a new philosophy. A philosophy that embraces the future, that values efficiency, and that delivers a modern taste for a modern world. The era of sentimental old-fashioned cooking is over. The era of advanced modern has begun. That was my cue. As she basked in the applause, a man in a dark suit walked calmly to the stage and handed her a thick legal envelope. It was Arthur Pendleton's associate. "Miss Isabella Thorne," he said, his voice calm but carrying. "You have been served." Isabella's smile faltered. The room went quiet. She tore open the envelope, her eyes scanning the first page. I saw the color drain from her face. From the back of the room, my lawyer, Arthur, began to walk towards the stage. "What is the meaning of this?" she stammered into the microphone. "The meaning," Arthur's voice boomed as he reached the stage, "is that this party is over. On behalf of my client, Ms. Eleanor Vance, the founding member of this company, I am officially invoking Article 9, Section 4 of the Corporate Charter. A legacy audit has been triggered." Panic erupted in the room. Investors started murmuring, reporters started scribbling. David rushed to the stage, grabbing Isabella's arm. "What is he talking about?" Before Isabella could answer, I walked onto the stage. I took the second microphone. The room fell into a stunned silence. I looked at the crowd, then at my son, and finally at his wife. "Hello, Isabella," I said, my voice steady and clear. "You said the era of old-fashioned cooking was over. You are wrong. The era of lying to your customers is over." I gestured to the large screen behind us. "Lily, if you would." The slick Vance Modern logo was replaced by a side-by-side chemical analysis. On the left, the lab report from my original sauce. On the right, the report from theirs. Words like sodium benzoate, potassium sorbate, and high fructose corn syrup were highlighted in red on their side. "For 40 years, my family's name on a jar was a promise," I said, my voice ringing with an authority they had never heard. "It was a promise of real food. This," I said, pointing at their side of the screen, "is not a promise. It is a lie. You have taken my legacy and filled it with chemicals and cheap substitutes to line your own pockets." Next, emails appeared on the screen. Emails from Isabella to her new suppliers, demanding the cheapest possible ingredients. Memos detailing the firing of dozens of loyal long-term employees. Finally, a picture of Maria appeared on the screen. A woman with a kind, proud face. "This is Maria Sanchez," I said. "She worked for this company for 40 years. Her hands helped build it." Isabella fired her and called her obsolete. "Tonight, I am announcing that I am reinstating Ms. Sanchez as head of production, effective immediately." I turned to my son. David was staring at the screen, his face ashen. He looked like a man who had just woken up from a long, terrible dream. He looked at Isabella, not with love but with a dawning horror. I delivered the final blow. "The legacy clause is clear," I announced. "The board is dissolved. All executive stock options from the past 5 years are forfeit. As of this moment, I am reclaiming my company." Isabella finally broke. She let out a guttural scream of pure rage. "You old witch!" she shrieked into the microphone. "You have ruined everything." "No, my dear," I said calmly. "You did. You were so busy looking at the future you forgot to respect the past. And the past, as you can see, has a way of catching up with you." The aftermath was a corporate bloodbath. Isabella and her hand-picked executives were gone. The Vance Modern line was scrapped before a single jar hit the shelves. The press had a field day. Our stock plummeted, but I didn't care. I had saved my company's soul. I rehired Maria and our old team. I called our farmers and reinstated our contracts. I promoted Lily to head of marketing. We spent the next year rebuilding, returning to the honest principles Robert and I had started with. It was hard work, but it was joyful work. My relationship with my son was the hardest thing to rebuild. He came to me a week after the party, a broken man. He apologized with real tears in his eyes. He had been weak, foolish, and blinded by a woman he thought he loved. I did not forgive him easily. Forgiveness, I told him, is earned, not given. I offered him a job. Not in the boardroom but on the factory floor packing boxes. "Start here," I said, "and learn what this company is really about." To my surprise, he accepted. Last week, I saw him talking with Maria by the production line. He was listening intently as she explained the delicate process of balancing the acidity of the tomatoes. He was smiling, a real genuine smile. Perhaps in time he would find his way back. Tonight I am sitting in my kitchen. The house is quiet. A jar of our original sauce is simmering on the stove, filling the air with the scent of my childhood, my life, my legacy. I open my old recipe book, the one with the faded, sauce-splattered pages. On the inside cover, in my husband Robert Strong's steady handwriting, was a note I hadn't read in years. It said, "For my Eleanor." The heart of it all. Never let them change the recipe. I smiled and closed the book. To anyone listening to my story, I want to say this. Legacy is not just about what you build. It's about what you refuse to let be destroyed. Protect your heart, protect your truth, and never, ever let anyone tell you that you are obsolete. The world may change, but integrity is timeless. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I am still here.